Hello, my name is Michael Drummy, and I'm here to talk about my debut collection of poetry entitled Perdido, which was published last year, 2025, by Main Street Rag Press. And I'm doing this at the gracious request of Boulder Bookstore. Um, the book basically consists of about 75 poems that were written uh, over from 2022 to 2025, or 2024, maybe a few in 2025. And I retired in 2022. My wife and I retired, and we moved from Colorado to Ecuador in the Andes. Gorgeous colonial city there, Cuenca, third largest city in Ecuador, and lived there for about a year before returning to Colorado. It was at that time while we were living there that I began to write poetry again. I had written poetry when I was much younger, high school, college, and really had abandoned it, except for some haiku over the years, which I had published, but even that kind of had gone by the wayside. Be that as it may, I think it was in June of 22, and I wrote a poem. I watched a film, a nice little film, odd little film. By odd, I mean eccentric. It was a wonderful little film entitled Patterson. And I won't go into the details, but that inspired me, but it's worth watching if you can get your hands on it. Adam Driver's in it. At any rate, I watched that film, and I left that film thinking I can write again. It's about a poet, and I wrote a poem, and then I wrote another one, and I think it wasn't actually. I think while we were still there, I maybe had submitted some for publication, and they were accepted. But it was when we returned later in 2022, the end of 2022, early 2023, that I began to, and I was writing a lot. I began to submit my poetry for publication, and they started to get picked up. So that's what the book consists of. And there is kind of a theme that runs through it. It's dedicated to my brother, Matt, who took his own life, unfortunately, at 39, about 20 years ago. The shadow of Matt and Matt's death, my brother's death, kind of hangs over the book. The title of the book comes from a poem I wrote about my brother, which had a different title, and this goes into where the cover came from. I had written a poem. I wasn't super happy with it about my brother's death, and had written a number of others, but this was kind of really focusing on it. And when I was in Ecuador, there was good friends of ours that we had known for years. We'd been going down to Ecuador for years before we retired there. They had retired there, and it was a couple, and the husband, Gary, was he has since passed away, but he was a master printmaker, world renowned, wonderful guy, a little temperamental at times, but I had the greatest respect for him. And once he passed away in early 2023, I was going through a number of his artworks on his website, and I came across a collograph of his entitled Perdido, and I was struck by it. There was an image in it that it's a abstract piece, and there was an image though that jumped out at me, almost like a Where's Waldo thing, and it immediately made me think of this poem I kind of had set aside. The poem wasn't entitled Perdido at that time, but I immediately changed the title of the poem, worked around with it a little bit more, and then I said to myself that if I ever have a book published, I want this print of Gary's, this reproduction, on the cover of the book, and I want the title of the book to be Perdido, after the poem that I had now written and I was now happy with. So it was kind of an ekphrastic situation, which ekphrastic, just all that really means is, for poets anyhow, something that inspires us, a work of art, maybe another poem, another something written. But in this case, it was a work of art that I had already written a poem, but this helped me to, it was inspired in part, let me put it this way, the final version of this poem by this work of art that's on the cover again here. And I was thrilled to get this, to be able to have this appear on the cover of the book. So as far as my writing process goes, I do try, I mean, I write most days. If I'm not writing something out of whole cloth that day, I'm, usually editing things. I record almost every poem I write. I don't do a video version, but I record it, an audio version, and listen to it. Because for me, poetry is first of all musical. That's how I was always drawn to poetry. And it was never a matter of, do I understand it? What does it mean for me, as much as it was, this sounds really wonderful. Who wrote this? How did they come up? How did they put these words together to make this particular poem sound that way? I think of Eliot, but in particular, Gerard Manley Hopkins is a big influence of mine when I was younger. And one of the poems that I'll read in a few minutes, I definitely had Hopkins in mind when I wrote it. I just love the mellifluous way that he wrote, and again, he was a profound influence, and has been on my work and still is. But yeah, I try to write most days. I try to get out of the way of myself and let the poem have its own voice, so to speak. I don't consider myself a channel as such for this kind of work, but I do want to respect what it is that has inspired me to write a poem. I'm not important. The poem is important. And I've definitely learned, having published now quite a few poems, dozens of poems in this book, and had people respond to it, that once you throw something out there, it's like a child. I mean, it has a life of its own. And so that has informed my work. There's some of that in the book itself, where I'm not really responding to people, but I have that in mind, that this is written. People will read this, and I'm not sure what they'll think about it. Sometimes I have someone, a particular person, if I'm writing it, say to my wife or my daughter. But even then, I wrote one in this book called Father's Day, and a number of people, particularly several women, because it hadn't been published before, but when they read it, they said it really moved them, and I was kind of surprised. I was glad, but so I am dedicated to the craft. I've taken workshops. I work with a lot of writing partners now, probably half a dozen. We do asynchronous work. We look at each other's work, comment on it, and I have found that to be very helpful. I was in workshops. But I'm not one of these people that's particularly, like prompts, it just does nothing for me. I really have to go with what's, what I see in the world. I don't need prompts, I guess, is what I mean. There's enough out there, artificial prompts, I guess. As far as a couple of books I've read recently, one was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara novel. I think it came out about 10 years ago. A friend of mine recommended it, and it was just, I think that the protagonist in that, the main character in that book is one of the great characters of the 21st century. I don't recall the character's name at this point because I read it maybe 6, 8 months ago, but I couldn't put the book down. And more recently, in fact, I haven't finished reading it. A friend of mine sent me, a fellow poet sent me a large volume of his selected poems, J.R. Solange, Selected Poems 2002 to 2021. And I love his work. Just came across it several months ago, and have been dipping into that and reading it, a little bit at a time and savoring every poem. And Joel is his name, is a wonderful poet and has been writing and has published, 40 books, 400 poems in journals, and he's just prolific. So I think at this point I would like to read a poem or two from the book to conclude. And the first one I will read is entitled, where is it here? It is entitled The Potato Washers at the Tomebamba. And the Tomebamba is a river in Cuenca, Ecuador, where we walked. My wife and I quite often walked, almost every day. Here we go. And so one day we were walking by there, and quite often you would find people, indigenous, down at the banks of the river almost every day, even on the weekends. And they would be washing clothes, and in many cases they'd be washing potatoes and taking them to the mercado nearby, a few blocks away. And one day we were walking by, and I had started to write some poems, and it's probably a few months into when I had started to, write poems again. And I was inspired looking at them, thinking of some of Van Gogh's paintings, of the peasants in the fields with the piles of hay. And anyhow, I was inspired by these people washing these potatoes in front of me, and I wrote this poem. And this was also one of the poems. I had a clear sense that I was trying to do, or was inspired by, with this poem by Hopkins. The Potato Washers at the Tomebamba. Upstream, due west of the Centro, far below the gentle headwaters that rise in the regal Cajas, where the river, splitting, spits, crashing over the golden boulders toward the city, you will find them. Methodically, the men lug and the women scrub the meaty papas, knee-deep in the rushing stream, booted, festooned in the bright raiment of the indigenous, striped sacks bulging on the wide grassy banks, while their niños play nearby, shaded under pungent eucalyptus and weeping bottlebrush, a tapestry of winged clockvine cascading in the wisping zephyrs, black auburn in emerald, a dappled, dizzying sun of 1,000 shifting sparks, shimmering on the surface of the unsoiled agua that slakes the thirst of their only earth. So I think I'll just read one more, and it's a little bit longer. and it is entitled Go to Your Settings, and I have to go to that page. Here we go. Go to your settings. Go to your settings and click on the Amazon delivery guy who just dropped off a package for you on your front doorstep. Then click on the electric Amazon delivery vehicle that transported the delivery guy and your package to your neighborhood. Then click on the Amazon warehouse 30 miles from your front doorstep where your package was loaded onto the electric delivery vehicle. Then click on the Amazon warehouse worker who inserted the item you purchased this morning into a box with plastic packing bubbles. Then click on the real estate team that found the land on which the Amazon warehouse would be built just off the interstate. Then click on the family who owned that land for 4 generations and sold it to a real estate company that would subdivide and develop it. Then click on the irrigated fields that alternately produced crops and lay fallow while that family leased them out for decades. Then click on the patent office that issued the homestead patents for 2 160-acre parcels of land given to 2 brothers from that family over 100 years ago. Then click on the military officers who claimed that land from the indigenous people on behalf of the United States government after the Colorado War. Then click on each leader of each tribe of the indigenous peoples of the Great Plains before returning to Amazon that piece of crap you just bought. And remember to leave a review. Thank you again for allowing me to introduce this book to folks and to read a few poems from it and to let you know what the book is about. So have a great day.